to order the January 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Community Preservation Act Committee. The agenda mainly is second of two nights of presenters for applicants of funding for the 2020 fiscal year. So we have an agenda item number 1, which is review and approval of past meeting minutes. And so will the committee, we want to deal with these now, or do we want to table this and jump into presentations? What do you think?
If we're ready to vote, you can
Have you reviewed, what's that? Have we reviewed and ready to approve them? Comments?
Yeah, they look fine to me.
I
Yeah.
know Elaine's on. So, well, entertain a motion on the minutes then.
So which minutes were we talking about?
Minutes for 1:15:20.
2/9/19
And 12/9.
and
Those are,
1/15/20.
yeah, it's 1:15:20.
Yeah, that's the one I sent
So do you want to approve the January 15th minutes, but table the 12/9 until folks have more time to review?
That motion.
Yes, I make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There we go. So there were no comments on the 1:15
No, they
minutes.
look fine.
All right, so we'll jump right into presentations from applicants. First up, we have the Holyoke YMCA, which is falling under the recreational space category with a request of $148,274. Welcome.
First of all, thank you for allowing us to come and present. For those of you who I haven't met before, I'm Kathy Viens. I'm the CEO of the Holyoke YMCA, and we're just going to do a really quick, how did we get to here today? A little bit of quick overview for those people who aren't overly familiar with the Y. I promise it'll be quick, but I wanted to make sure that we kind of told you how we got to today. I actually have two people with me today. I have Cheryl Bree, who is our Director of Child Care Services at the YMCA, who directly everything that we do with children, she's responsible for. And Anya is kind enough to come here tonight also with us, who has helped us put together a scope of work and give you a good idea of what it is we envision doing moving forward. So with that said, I'm going to very quickly, I'm going to pull the chair over because I just feel like I'm going to be standing in front of everybody's way. So the Y itself has been in existence for a very long time. It was founded in 1885. It is a community-based, volunteer-led organization. So we, as staff, are charged with putting the vision, thoughts, and ideas of the volunteers who are community members into practice. We have been downtown from inception. We've been in 2 locations, one on the corner of Appleton and High Street. We were there until the building burned down in the 30s, and then we have been at our present location since then. We have no intentions of going anywhere. We are loving our location. We really believe it has the biggest impact because of the location that we have. So I want to be very clear about that. What we do is really about doing work that's going to be beneficial to the community. We work in education, literacy, childcare, aquatics, fitness, health, wellness. We do a variety of programming. Currently, we have about 3,000 members. Almost half of those are family members of some kind. So we wanted to kind of give you a framework of who really uses the Y. So, and then the biggest thing I think that always people need to understand is we will never turn somebody away for lack of being able to pay. So we welcome anyone to be a member of the Y. People are welcome to be engaged. I would estimate between 35 and 40% of our members receive some kind of financial assistance to use our facilities. So there is no reason why anyone from the community can't access our services and our activities. So I just wanted to jump right to where we are today. Last summer, we started really looking at our play area. We've looked at it much longer than that. And our play area was a very small playground, but more importantly, uneven surface that the kids were playing on. It really was pretty barren. You can kind of see how barren it was in many spots. we had an opportunity through a grant to be able to expand our playground. At that time, we said, okay, who's using it currently? So we looked at who was our current users. We have mostly grade schoolers that were able to use it. It wasn't designed for any age except for ages 5 through 12. So it was limiting in that respect. It was also uneven play surface, no shade really in the summer, no sitting areas. There was just a bunch of things that needed to be addressed. 20-year-old design, great 20 years ago, not so good in this time of day. So what we sort of did was, let's talk about what it is we really dream of having and how can we be more welcoming to the neighborhood that we are existing in. We have single-family homes, we have multi-family homes. We also have many apartment blocks that have a lot of first-time homeowners and renters in them. People come and use our facility. They're on our property all the time, riding their bikes, walking around, playing. They're there. So we wanted to start saying, let's build something that children all the way up to age 14 could use. We want to encourage health and wellness. As you're probably aware, schools are doing less and less physical activity with children. We really spend a great deal of time trying to really promote physical activity for children. It's going to, in the long run, be, they're our future. They're the ones that we want to make sure we reach. We wanted to create a level surface, a playing surface, and more importantly, provide that safe environment for people to come and play. We have our eyes on our playground all the time, pretty much. We are the ones taking care of it. We're the ones that are invested there, and we want to know in 20 years that it's still just as good as it is today. So we wanted to engage our neighbors in usage and then provide some sitting and shade areas, which didn't exist before that point. To figure out what it is exactly we were going to do, we kind of said, okay, let's talk to kids, let's see what their dream is, and in the end, we built a playground. The playground takes up a third more space than it originally did. It was built by 200 volunteers. So literally in a one-day span, with a lot of pre-planning, this playground came to be. And you can see the space it takes. It really, it's a beautiful playground. It is designed for 3 to 12-year-olds now. That was phase 1. But our kids who kind of have the say in what do you want on the playground, what do you want to be doing, what activities are you really trying to do, kind of gave us a wish list. So they were always dreaming of more. So we asked them, draw what your perfect playground would look like. Tell us what it is you're looking for. And as you can see, they had a lot of things that they're looking for. And what we tried to do with the first phase is what could we address, how could we address it. So really, what we're really planning to do is how can we create more of that open activity space? How can we make it more welcoming for people who live there? Currently, we focused totally on the kids' piece of it. And so as we continue to go, here's the next phase of the plan, and that's what we're really here tonight to talk to you about. I will tell you the first phase, we've already invested about $30,000 in the work. If we had to even sort of figure out the volunteer hours between demolition of what was their prep of site and the time that people gave to build that other playground, I can't even imagine what the real cost would be. But we know we've only addressed part of it. We haven't gotten to that level playing surface. We haven't gotten to reaching every age group, which for us, we're thinking all the way from infants. So when families come to the playgrounds, they can really enjoy it. We've added the seating spaces already. We've done some of those pieces, but now this is the next step. So I'm going to ask Anya, who this is really her drawing, which has been put together through the visioning with the children and working with Cheryl, to give you an overview of what it is we're looking to do for our next phase.
Thank you.
Anya.
So I apologize, this slide, there's some white blocks here that shouldn't be on the plan, but I'll go through with you, what we envisioned, like this shouldn't be here, that's a boo-boo.
And
But I think
I think you all
PDF
in
or
your
something.
packet had the picture. Because that was something that we
What was
included.
your last name?
My last name's Duffy, and I'm a registered landscape architect in Massachusetts, and I've been practicing for 8 years, 12 years, but 8 years professionally. I do this work every day. I'm a playground designer. I've done lots of playgrounds in the city of Springfield. And I'm also a mother of 2 children that went to the YMCA preschool, and that's how I got in touch with Cheryl and Kathy. And I just saw what they were doing with the smaller playground and said, we thinking about adding on to it? Because right now, the existing playground is in this dotted area. Here's the Blue Parrot Youth Center, the YMCA is here, and there's entrances at this edge here, this edge here, and over in this parking lot, as well as on Beach Street. So the site really has access from all four sides. With the work they did, they established a playground, they put down a safe playing surface, which is engineered wood fiber, it's a loose fill. But the whole site in itself isn't really considered accessible. There aren't any walkways to get there. So this plan shows a circulation system that's paved. It's 5 to 6 feet wide. We didn't have a lot of room to work with, but it's wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side, or young children to ride around on scooters or tricycles or walking balance bikes. The site also creates shade, level lawn spaces for maybe a slip and slide or gathering or a fitness class, or you name it, just democratic open play space, as well as some areas left over on the periphery to handle stormwater. This is a schematic plan, but as this goes forward, I imagine the designer would design it so that it meets all the stormwater standards that the city requires. And yeah, it just basically plays off of that initial playground and adds a circulation system, makes it safe, makes it accessible, creates spaces for gathering, fitness, and I think it would just be a real asset to the community. It's, like I said, we all said, safe. Eyes are on it. It's going to be maintained. It's going to be cleaned up. Litter is a big problem in urban areas. Sometimes we find things there that, you know, shouldn't be there. Kids pick up. So I know the Y is going to be out there every day cleaning this up. So that's my input.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Do you have anything else that's,
Well, I think what we need to remember is all the decisions that we make as a Y are based on the community needs. You know, everything we do is based on the community needs. So there is, to our knowledge, there are no infant toddler playgrounds in the area, you know, especially in the area that we serve. There's nowhere for a parent to bring their child and teach them how to ride a bike. So this provides a really safe space for parents to do that. And we understand that that there needs to be a public benefit, and we agree to that, and we're all into providing access to the community.
And the bike shop is right there too.
Yeah, the bike shop is right there.
Ideally located.
Yeah, and for us, you know, we've taken a hard look at this, and we said, we really don't want to have closed times if we can possibly avoid that at any time. We want it open to the public at all times. So how can we do the balance between our licensed programs as well as for public use? And so as we continue to look in licensing, there is space that is dictated that if you have so many children in an area, you have to have this much space that they can play in. So those are things that we continually look at, but we have not, and we're really hoping we won't have to put up any kind of limitations for people having access to it. We're really hoping that it can truly be a blended use. We currently go down to Avery Field, as Terry knows, you know, almost all summer long with our children, and as good as that is when it's a really hot day, there really isn't a lot of shade, there isn't water access, there's not bathroom access. So for us to be able to have a few different options with children of all ages is really beneficial to us. And we'll continue to use the local park, but the local park is 2 blocks away. And you know, I think for us, we tend to go down to the park and try to pick it up before we bring our children down there, knowing that unfortunately people don't respect the property the way we don't like them to respect the property. We, you know, on our property, we pretty much have our staff walking our property every morning, making sure that anything that should be picked up and taken care of is taken care of. And I have to say, we've seen neighbors coming over already using the playground and stuff. So we know that they're doing that already, and if they watched us as we were building it, like, when can we go on it, when can we play, because we had to let the concrete set and stuff, so people in the area do take advantage of the space, and we just feel like it would be that much more welcoming to bring, especially families together, because they have a place to sit, do a little picnic lunch, or just sit in the space and play.
Any other questions on committee members?
So can you speak a little bit more around public access to this outside area, especially in conjunction to what you mentioned about changing areas or bathroom access?
For our programs, we would have all of that. For the community at large, most of them are from the neighborhood, so they tend to go back and forth to their own homes. But we do not have it ever locked off. There are some gates there, they're not locked. Please come on in, use the space, free access to come in and out whenever they want. So we have not tried to in any way, shape, or form discourage anyone from taking advantage of that space whenever they want to use it.
And if a parent with an infant or toddler suddenly had to use a restroom, for example, is that something they'd be able to come into the Y and say, I'm sorry, my toddler quickly has to use the bathroom, can I?
We would typically accommodate that anyway.
I would hope so, but if,
Yeah.
I want to
No, we
ask.
would typically accommodate that for them anyway. I mean, the main entrance to the Y is, around the corner from that, but we would be open to allowing them to come in. We don't turn people away typically.
So when you talk about it being open at all times and the gates never being locked, so do you find that people are using it overnight, or is there an actual closing hour? Or?
We have not had any issues with people using it overnight. We do not have it lit overnight, so there's not really that want for people to be in there late at night using the place. Plus, our neighbors really do keep an eye on the property, and they let us know if something out of the ordinary is going on. I will get phone calls from them saying, hey, this is going on, but there's 2 houses that abut us. They pay attention, and the people across the street on Beach Street are very good about really watching the property. And, really, I think they take pride in being able to know that they can use it. So they want to make sure it's in good shape. But no, we've not had any issues with anyone hanging around there, homelessness, anything else.
Is it lit right now?
It is not lit. There are a couple of lights in our back parking lot, but it's not really set up to be lit. And we felt like we didn't necessarily want to light it because it's also in a neighborhood where people, when the end of the day comes, and they would like to have not somebody playing in there at 12 o'clock at night because they have great lighting.
So when I asked in my questions to you, Kathy, about hours for the general public, you said the area is open to the community with hours varying throughout the year. And you mentioned right now after 6 p.m. on weekdays and full days on the weekends, the community has full use. So are you now saying that the community, the greater community, not YMCA members, could use the space before 6 p.m. during the weekdays?
What we're really trying to do is see if we can make that really continue to happen. It's happening now.
Oh.
It really comes down to if we don't have the square footage, like we have 30 children that we bring out there, the space is licensed to have 30 children there. If we know there's 10 people out there, then we can only bring 20 kids out, that type of a balance. But at this point in time, we really want to try to figure out a way that we can just say, it is always available for people to use. There will be times that we have our children out there, which obviously that's the primary, group that's going to be there. But I want to remind you that every single child that's in our program probably is from a low income household that is in our after school program. I mean, those children, almost every single one of them receive some kind of state aid, if not full state aid, in order to be able to be cared for after school. It's not like we have people that aren't Holyoke residents really using it, even for our program. It is mostly Holyoke residents taking advantage of it.
And in what proximity to the Y are most of those kids?
A lot of those kids. We don't have our own transportation. We don't have vans or buses transporting the kids. So a lot of our kids are from the shelter up on Oak Street, from the apartment blocks on Elm, and Pine Street, so a lot of those families are walking down to the Y. And the nice thing is that they're picking up their kids, and then in the nice weather, they're going over to the playground and really letting their kids run around, which is really nice to see. There needs to be more of that, you know, in this community, so.
Anybody else? Questions on the committee?
The $148,000, what percentage of your entire budget is that amount? And there's many worthy projects coming in front of the CPC this year. I think we wish we could fund all of them. So if we can't, then is there another ask that you have from us in terms of, here is this smaller piece of the project that we could do as a single piece of a project or as a phase? Or we will come back to you next year?
It could be any of those things, but I think, you know, we've talked internally and said probably the part we would focus on the most first is that level playing area, because we really believe that we need to create that safe playing area. If you can see it, it's almost like they have the moguls out there. So, you know, every day we bring the children out there, we're like, we've got to find a way to level this, we've got to find a way to put a really good surface out here so that we don't have to worry about injuries for the children that are using it on a daily basis. The second piece would be the infant toddler type of playgrounds, and then the bike path would be the third. Knowing that we have ways that people can use like the side, the back of the building or something for bikes, but we really like to be able to create that space that a parent has a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, that all of them have something to do, which that's very hard to find in many communities. So. Yeah, but I think we would do that, and also this is kind of dependent on what we get for funding, how much funding would we have on hand that maybe could help offset it, what could we maybe do on a volunteer basis like we did with the last playground. Those would all be pieces that we would have to then take that harder look at on the backside.
Thank you.
So if it was just, if the CPC just decided to fund the level playing area, do you have an idea what the cost of that portion of the budget would be, or the ask would be?
Not off the top of my head. Do you have any idea, Anya, how that would break out? I'd have to really look.
We're talking, like
turf,
natural grass,
yes.
natural grass.
Yeah.
Throw a number at it, 15, 20, you know, to bring some good topsoil in there, regrade it, probably even put sod down. It's gonna get used right away. And, I don't know if irrigation was in that cost, but you do have a spigot, so.
Right, we have a spigot out here, so we're
Sprinkler
fine.
in.
So I don't think they would.
I don't know the square footage off the top of my head, so I don't wanna,
Okay.
you know,
And it is,
but there
it
is,
is,
we could get you that number
Okay, that would be
with a little bit of
great.
math.
With the paving.
But it's doable, I mean, it's, you fine grade it.
that would be
grade
the
some
paved
topsoil,
path.
sod.
Yeah.
The paving and servicing, that's,
That's the bike
The bike
and walking
path,
path. That would be the part that would be paved and
okay.
surfaced that way.
So the rest of the part, you wouldn't want, you don't need to?
No, we wouldn't want it to be all hard paved. We want to be able to have kids go out there and play.
Right.
So this is all the level playing area,
You're right.
Okay.
and this is
That's
green
the top
space,
end.
and this is all like that's the playground.
The wood.
The wood
That's the
partnerships.
currently existing one, yeah.
Okay.
So when we're talking.
That's already mostly there, so this is all new, and this is like where we would scoop out an area for the infant playground, it's not shown. But we'd have to, there's an edge in place now, and we need a new edge to keep the wooden carpet
So
in place.
When we're talking about the level playing area,
That's
that
this.
would just be that area.
And it does drop off in grade, and we do have a little retaining wall here to make this level, so you're basically filling this a bit in this area.
Because right now it's uneven. Okay.
And it's also sloping.
Okay.
This is actually a steep
Oh,
area,
I
not,
see.
I mean, probably 5%. But we wanna level it with a little retaining wall and bring some fill.
And I know we didn't say much about it, but we do have adult exercise classes in the summer that love to go outside, and we really don't have the space necessarily to bring them out all the time. So, you know, if we had that grassed kind of area, especially for some of the seniors that come to our programs and stuff early morning when the air's still really good and the air quality's good. Our gym is not air conditioned, so it can be 95 in the gym, but it can be 75 outside. So to have the option to bring and move the classes in and out on really nice, especially summer days, would be wonderful.
So
So like, if we could
Yeah.
get a budget for that smaller project, that might be very helpful too.
Okay, so like a phase one.
Yeah.
And just, I know I mentioned in the questions about the covenant, the restrictive covenant. And you said that Y would be willing to agree to that, and you mentioned, you asked me, I think, a question about, or you said that a land survey is sometimes included. And I did look into that a little with our current, somebody in our city solicitor office told me that the land survey is not required
Okay.
for a restrictive covenant, so that $3,000 you were concerned about, I don't think that will.
Yeah, because those were, when I talked to my attorney goes, you may have to do A, B, and C, you know, because we were really just looking at this
yeah.
really from a very high level, and so he's like, yeah, this may be some of the costs that you might incur.
Anything else? Anybody in the audience have any comments or questions about the proposal? No? All right, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the consideration.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Nice to see
Nice
you,
to see you.
former committee member.
I know,
There we go, this one.
Yeah.
I know. She said it all. She was having a good oh, yeah.
And so we have a really,
All right, next up, Toepfert basketball court.
yes.
And this is Holyoke Housing Authority. And under the recreation and open space category.
So my name is Justine Sabbs. I'm the Director of Resident Services at the Housing Authority.
Last name?
SABBS.
Yeah, just pass it.
Oh, you pass it down?
Will you say your title one more time?
It's a little bit long, so it's Director of Resident Empowerment
Thank you.
and Community Programming. I hyphenated it into services just as we began, but I'll
And
do the whole
community,
thing.
sorry.
And community programming. Yep.
Or the
Program. Yep. So I didn't do a PowerPoint, but you guys have a visual. Okay. So on this front page here, it's just kind of an aerial view of the property. So Toepfert Apartments, well, let me start from the beginning. So Holyoke Housing Authority, as you know, is a public housing authority in the city of Holyoke. We own and operate close to 850 units of public housing. Toepfert Apartments is our third largest family development, and it's located at the corner of Canal and Lyman Street. So there are 93 units, probably closer to about 350 people, depending on the family size, that reside in that area. And the Housing Authority tries to be kind of as creative and innovative as we can outside of the mission of providing safety and affordable housing, obviously. So this has been something, the Toepfert basketball court has been something that's been on our radar for a couple of years. And we just last year started to look more closely at different ways to fund the project. So from this aerial view here, you can see the existing junior basketball court. There's quite a few trees, so it is, you know, shaded fairly well. And in the kind of right center, you can barely see it, but there is a little tiny playground there too. So we assessed the whole space. The playground is in pretty good condition. It does need a painting, but structurally very sound. And leading up to the court, it's accessible via a paved sidewalk from every entrance, every parking lot. And the only fencing that exists, as you flip through, the only fencing that exists is right along Canal Street at the back of the court. That's solely to prevent the ball from bouncing over and just kind of give it a little bit of a perimeter on that corner. But right now, the fence is only 4 feet, and so that didn't really help anything in that current design. So in this project, we enlisted the services of Berkshire Design Group, and they are standard architects, landscape architects, and they gave us some proposals as to what might be the cost budget. I think you have that in the original application, but what we might see here, and they are privy to, you know, what it takes to do a basketball court these days, which is a lot different than it was years ago when the property was constructed. But really, we work very closely with the Boys and Girls Club. They have a satellite unit on the property. They use this space all the time. you know, for their activities. They have basketball clinics. They use the program for their outdoor activities when the weather's nice. And the court is really highly utilized by all of the young people who live on the property. So as I mentioned before, the fencing is only on the perimeter at the back of the court. It's not blocked off. The public is welcome to use it as they wish. Right now, in its current condition, there's a lot of pretty large cracks throughout the surface. Towards the corner of Canal Street, it puddles so far on one half of the court that it pretty much makes it unusable after a really good rain. So that would be one of our first steps, is to get proper drainage installed there. And we really just want to kind of bring the space back to life, because we know it's used by a lot of the tenants. And we've heard some feedback from a lot of the kids. We have a summer youth employment program, and a lot of those same kids use the space, and they saw a couple of the other courts going up in the city, and they said, well, you know, ours is pretty not in good shape, like, what are you gonna do there? So we, you know, we've heard feedback over the years, but this is something, like I said, that we've put on the radar and that we'd really like to undertake, obviously. So we've come to the CPA with this proposal, and I think, do you guys have the original application
Yes.
there that breaks down the budget? Yeah, so, we tried to be as detailed as possible. So currently existing, there are light posts, but they are very dim. So what we did was include in the budget a replacement of those light posts. That is something that can likely be negotiated, that can maybe change the bulb, that could lessen the price in that area. But the court itself, from what we're hearing and what the best way to go is that it's really, this is the surfacing that is used industry-wide now. So we couldn't really change kind of the fill or the surfacing of the court very much. Let me see what else. But the existing goals are in okay shape, but the backboards are deteriorating, so we would have to see if we could kind of do a little bit of both. But like I said, the sidewalks are all accessible into the court. I think one of them leading up to it might need a little bit of attention, but can be patched fairly easily. But everything is accessible in that area. So the basketball court and the playground space are used, like I said, very, very frequently. So our main goal is to give this property a little bit of attention. We've held community basketball tournaments there before with the Holyoke SSYI when they were in existence, and Career Point and all that. And you know, we made it happen and we spruced it up as best we could, but it wasn't really what we wanted it to be. So this property and this, you know, the young people that use the space are very deserving of this, obviously, and so that's why we are bringing it to you guys for some consideration. And like I said, the Housing Authority, we try to be as creative as we can and pursuing different ways. Unfortunately, that's part of my job, where I get to work directly with the residents, and it's not all of the, you know, the housing construction or the total rehab. I get to really see what people want and what people need, and these are a lot of really, really good, hardworking people that want a safe place right in their backyard for their kids to play. That's well enclosed, but also open to the public, as I mentioned, but it's safe and it's kind of tucked away in the corner. It's lit until, you know, dusk, I guess, or a little bit darker. So it's just something that's really highly utilized, and right now the condition that it's in, it's not really conducive to kids play in the way that they play basketball now, and any kind of formal use at all either. So that's all I got so far.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
I have a quick question.
Sure, yes.
So first of all, I don't know if we mentioned it's $100,000 ask.
Yes,
I didn't do that in the
Yes.
introduction,
Yep.
so it's for the public's benefit.
Sure.
I noticed on the submittal here, it says existing junior basketball court.
Yes.
So is the plan to expand the size of the court to,
So-
no,
So
okay, same size?
that was our initial venture, but the designers said because the court so closely abuts the fence and Canal Street, that we really couldn't just expand in one way or the other, so it's gonna
Keep the
be a
same
junior
size.
court. It
Okay.
is a decent size, it's
Yeah.
not, you know, little teensy weensy one, but it's not a big as Valley Arena, as they would say, by a couple feet on either side. But no, it will stay the same size.
Anything else, questions? Anything else?
Yeah, so I know what you're saying about how it's open to the public.
Yep.
I'm curious though, like, do you have a sense that the space is really used by people who are not residents or part of the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, so we, the court is not obviously monitored all the time, but we have the streets abutting us will be North Summer that keeps going down leading into Mosier. So a lot of folks who have a lot of, family members in the area. So we have heard that a lot of the kids whose family members or friends or kids they go to school with who may not live on the property are invited to come play. So you will drive by it, sometimes at night, or I'll stop by at the Boys and Girls Club, and there's kids that I don't particularly recognize playing with kids that I do. So it definitely is utilized by the public. I couldn't say, what that number would be, but it definitely is a space that I think people feel free to walk on and off. And the Housing Authority there's cameras set up in the exteriors of all the buildings, so we would of course handle any problematic situations as they would arise, but we don't anticipate that. We want it to be a safe, open space for kids to play, and for them to be active, because along with the Y, that's what we want, so. I couldn't quantify what that number would be, but I do know it's utilized by folks who don't live on the property, and very welcome to do so.
And specifically, would the funds be used for repaving or resurfacing? I'm trying
Yeah.
to remember.
Yep, so I have,
Yes.
so we put in, in the budget that I included here, we did express to the designer that the least amount of kind of demo of the court that we could do would be for the best, to not disrupt the space and how often it's utilized, but it would be to cover the partial demo and the additional fill in the asphalt on the court. We did include in there the goals, to replace the goals, like I said, they're not in great shape, to increase the height of the fencing, and then just the color, so the aesthetics of the court really is the big cost, I guess. And then, I put in, the total budget was $116, so I kind of reduced our payment for enlisting the services of the designer and the architect, obviously, because that's something that we wanted to do to make sure that we were looking at this soundly and making sure the permitting would be in order and all that stuff, so. There's quite a few things that it would cover.
So I'm looking at the budget
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Do you know which part the 100,000 from CPA would cover?
Mostly everything under that element, that first block. So the mobilization, the demo, the fill, the asphalt, the sidewalk paving, the goals, the fence, the lighting, everything up in that upper area there.
The rest is a
Because
Yeah.
one issue is that we're not allowed to do sidewalk paving if that's a regular sidewalk.
Okay, yeah, then the Housing
Yeah.
Authority, if that is not an allowed expense, would
Yeah,
take that on.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's see, also just one thing I brought up in my questions with
Yes.
you was about, again, the issue of a restricted covenant for a fixed period of time, the deed restriction. And
Yeah.
I mean, your application, your proposal is a little unusual, because usually, something from a housing authority would be a community housing, a request, but this is for a recreational space request from the housing authority. So normally the housing authority would have total authority over
Right.
that space, so I'm just, it's a little unusual for the housing authority to give up that authority,
Yep.
so that they couldn't decide to, change the use of their own property. So I just wanted to make sure that you were
Very comfortable with that.
agreeable with
Yep,
that.
agreeable, yep, with the covenants and the restrictions, yep. And we want to keep the space open and useful, and we'll maintain it as necessary, and we're definitely comfortable and agreeable to the restrictions.
Yeah, that would be a minimum of 5 years,
Sure.
but the committee could decide to change the
Yeah,
number of
absolutely.
years.
We don't envision any other use for the space. We don't want to, not planning to go anywhere. Any other modernization that would happen to the property would be on the actual units on the structure, so.
I'm just going to, even though I think that the answer is certainly no, ask the same question that Megan just asked about the why, which is that we do have a lot of applications this cycle. So if we were able to give you partial funds but not full funds, is there some piece of this that you could usefully use these partial funds for?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think because there's so many elements to the project, that we would be able to, and like I said, the goals, the existing goals and nets, that is something that can kind of happen over a phase period of time, so if we take that out, that chops down the price a little bit. The lighting, like I said, there's the things that we have an electrician on staff, we can do some of those things internally, so, yes, I believe that even a portion of the funding requested, we would be able to make really good headway with the project. Mr. Mainville unfortunately is not here, he's at the Holyoke community meeting, but, so I can't say in particular how that would kind of break down, but, yes, I believe there's some of the kind of the lighter costs of the loam and the seed and the court lines and things like that, that we would be able to find some money to cover. So,
Yes, so
yes,
at your leisure, if you guys
Yes,
have time to
sure.
break that down a little, that would
Yes.
be very helpful.
okay, we could do that.
Yeah, just an
Yes.
alternative request, just in case.
Yeah,
Okay.
just in case.
Okay, yeah, thank you guys very much.
Anybody else in the public have a comment or question about this proposal? All right.
Thank you guys.
so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Next up, Michael Falcetti. That's me. Under the historic category, a request for $25,000 for Lady Liberty Veterans Park study.
Mr. Chairman and fellow committee members, it's to reiterate once again from the project application sheet, we have Veterans Park and Lady Liberty statue. We've seen this, you folks have seen this before, and as you can see in its glory, beautiful statue, historically relevant and commemorating the 51 men that died in the Civil War. And as I said in my application sheet, the $25,000 is to pay for the study and hiring and the person we hire would do the study of restoring Lady Liberty, specifically the names of the men that have died, the paragraph describing how their actions and so on and so forth, cleaning the statue itself, coating it and lighting the statue, and bringing it back to its former original state. This is not for the actual work, because the statue and the park is on the National Historic Register. As I said before, we have to abide by the U.S. Department of Interior's standards for cleansing a statue and restoring it and doing all those things. So it's rather a specialized amount of work that has to be done, and there's very rigorous requirements by the Department of the Interior. So to make sure that we do it correctly, I'm asking the committee for $25,000, and with this, we would go to the purchasing department and ask them to solicit bids from the American Society for Preservationists, which there are a number of people belonging to that society in the New England area that would send us, or send the purchasing department the bid or their proposal on doing this work. And then they would draw up the construction documents, what needs to be done, and so on and so forth, guiding and watching over as the work is being done, and signing off on it that the work that is done meets the requirements of the Department of the Interior. It's a rather specialized line of work. I'm praying that the $25,000 covers the amount of engineering, if you will, that has to be done for this for the preservation of the statue. I just arrived at it by an estimate of my own. So I'm hoping that it will cover it, but again, the only way we know for sure is that we have to go out to bid, request for proposal through the purchasing department and ask them to get bids and see what everyone says and what the amount of money that they're going to charge us. From there, we can go from there, and hopefully I don't have to come back next year or the year after and ask for money to do it. I'm hoping that there's extra sources of revenue that I'm working on now that will do the actual work. But it is a challenge, and as in all things, when you're trying to raise money. But I'm not planning to ask the committee for money to do the work. This is just money to do the study. Like I said, to write up the bill of material that's the grace of the Department of Interior, that meets their demands and qualifications to do a statue that's National Historic Register, registered along with the park, to bring it back to its original condition and to light it. Those are the big things. So I'm asking for $25,000, and it's for the study. It's not for the work, it's for the study. And I'm hoping that's enough to cover it.
Can you talk a little bit about the urgency of this request?
Well, unfortunately, time marches on, and as you can, if all of us were to walk around the statue right now with flashlights, unfortunately, some of the names of the 51 men that have died in the Civil War from Holyoke, their names are gradually fading into the stone. And there's one particular panel that describes how they went about it and the Civil War commitment by the city of Holyoke, and that's even being blended into the stone. So over a period of time, what bothered me was the fact that people would walk out 5 years from now and not even see a name. Right now, you've got letters missing from people's names, sentences that are gone. And I'm afraid that as time marches on, we're going to lose the whole thing. So to avoid that, right now, let's do the study. Let's get someone here on board. We do a study. We have a plan of attack. We have an estimate on the cost to do it. Then hopefully I'm successful in raising the money to do it, and the statue is restored to its original glory, except it's going to be lit in addition to being fully restored to what it once was when it was first erected. Some time ago, I don't remember, but it was a while ago. But it's not getting any better. It's only making it worse, unfortunately, as time marches on.
Anybody else?
So you mentioned there's some uncertainty about the actual, the amount, 25,000, and whether that's even going to be enough or the right amount, which is why I was wondering if I thought it might be helpful if you could provide a quote or two from one of the possible people that you could provide directly, on letterhead from that restore to the committee.
I was a little gun shy in doing that because it seems when you come up with an estimate, it is an estimate. And so if I were to tell you folks that this guy's going to charge us this much, but upon him arriving and actually proposing it, it may be twice of what we thought it would be. So I'd rather just do the proposal first and get the proposals in that are studied and reflected upon and drawn up. And if it's over 25,000, then we don't do it. And I have to come back to you folks next year and say, I need an extra $10,000, or whatever the case may be. I'm hoping $25,000 covers it, but to get an estimate is just that. It's an estimate. It's not that it may be dead on or it may be way off. So I'd rather not.
So if you got a couple of bids and quotes, wouldn't it give you a better idea of what the cost might be?
Yeah, I was a little worried about I don't know the purchasing, I'm not familiar with the purchasing department who will have to do this, would be in charge of it. I don't know the purchasing laws and requirements that when you ask somebody, when you go out to bid,
Prevailing wage law.
No, he's talking about procurement.
The procurement laws of the state of Massachusetts I'm not familiar with, so I try to stay away from that.
Can you fill us in a little?
Only a little bit. A couple of things. Lady Liberty is in the city park. It's actually owned by the city.
Okay.
I think you can never go out to bid without funding.
Oh,
So he couldn't go out to bid, but I'm guessing you'd be advised to hire a designer or an architect to find out what needs to be done. It's the architectural study instead of quoting piece by piece. I mean, I'd let the designer
I
do
agree.
it. And then in turn, the designer would set up your bid documents, because people in purchasing, I don't know historical, I wouldn't know how to even set up that bid, so that's what your initial request would cover.
Right, exactly.
And
let
I
them,
can't imagine it wouldn't be enough. That's an awful lot.
I'm
Just for
praying
the
that
study.
it is.
Just for this study.
It's just for the study, just to do that, to draw up those documents. I don't know what the procurement laws are for requesting studies or estimates, and if one would, if we were to ask a person to give us a budget figure on it, if the purchasing department may say, well now we can't, he's got a leg up on this other guy.
Your designer or architect or specialist would outline all of that. You go out to bids if your project's over $10,000.
Right, I'm not just, yeah, okay.
Otherwise, you
That's
can't go
okay.
out and get quotes, but you're kind of putting the cart before the horse.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
So
exactly.
find out how much you're looking at for your project from an expert instead of just,
That's why I prefer to have the purchasing department go out to bid and solicit preservationists,
yes.
and to do that work, and then upon receiving that, how much you're gonna charge us to do it. And if it's, I hope it's less than $25,000. I can't imagine it could be more, because we're not building it, we're not designing a statue, we're restoring
It
it.
could be only because probably about 15 years ago, a local woman tried to restore it and tried to raise funds, and she did a little bit of research, and it was very expensive then
To do the work or to do the study?
to do the work correctly. She didn't do a study, just to,
I can,
yeah, there wasn't an
anyway,
official
we've got to
study
be
done.
optimistic.
Yes,
No, it's, with all those requirements of the Department of the Interior, I don't want to get a letter from the Department of Interior saying, we would give the money back, you did it wrong.
no, the
so-
city, you'd have to still go through the city with
Right,
everything.
exactly, but to
So
avoid
you
all that,
wouldn't.
let's hire a preservationist, and he'll do all those things
Yes,
to make
in
sure we can
conjunction
go out to
with the
bid.
city,
But if somebody went and looked at this even 15 years ago,
yeah.
if we could still find out who it was, they may
Yeah.
have.
Oh, I know who it was, and I thought I pointed you in her direction.
Yeah, we got the information from her,
Yeah.
but there was nothing really that
No.
said that a study would cost this much.
Correct.
It was just
It
more of a general fundraising on the whole thing. It wasn't itemized in that manner.
Correct.
So yeah, we've got that, by the way.
Here's the thing, Mike, though, if it's cost under 10,000 to do the study, you don't have to go out to bid. So that would be, you could just go get somebody and do it. with-
Well, I prefer to go through let the city purchasing department, let them make that
Oh,
decision.
yeah,
and
you
go through
would,
them.
you would have to.
Yeah.
You would have to anyway, but you
Right.
might have to go out to bid and do all that
Well,
stuff.
all the better. I mean, I hope you're right. I mean,
I'm just saying, that
Yeah.
that would be a lot simpler.
yeah, well, I mean, I'll let the purchasing department run that. That I'm just here to request the funds, and upon approval of the funds, then I would go to the purchasing agent and say, Olivia Moselle was kind enough to give me a great treasure trove of information on the American Preservation Society of America, in which there are a number of people that belong to that society in the New England area that that do this kind of work. There's some from New Haven, from the Boston area, from the Worcester and Brattleboro, Vermont area, as I recall. So they're with their driving distance, that they can drive down for the day and look at it and
So you could get a
proposals.
quote from them, get a quote from a few of those people, and it may be under 10,000 and you can go.
No, that's fine, but I prefer to go through the purchasing department. I'd rather go through them and let them make that decision. I don't want to, I don't have the authority to do that. I prefer the purchasing department to do that.
So I'm feeling a little vague on this project, mostly because all the other projects have come in with real specifics as to what they want to do, and they've done their research on what it costs and how to do it. I love the project, and I'd love to see this, but I feel like it's slightly vague, but I'm not sure if that's just my feelings or how the rest of you feel.
Yeah, that's why it would be good if you would get some quotes, and maybe it's
Right.
under 10,000, and then you can just go ahead and do your thing, and I don't know, I'm just trying to simplify it for you. It's not as complicated as you think.
So, I know that MCPPO has procurement laws for the state, and there are lots of, amounts under which you don't have to do things, amounts above which you have to procure services publicly. And if you like, I know a little bit about it, but when you say go to the procurement department, they're just procuring, they're gonna advertise services on the, was it the public register? And so I hadn't actually seen it before, but I believe that it's divided into categories. People look at it, and then, like, I know they have architectural services, so, you know, you troll through, and maybe there's a preservation services, and when they see your advertisement to procure services, people respond, and then that's where you get your quotes from.
Exactly.
But you're relying on the procurement process of the city, which I think has to abide by these, you know, public laws.
As a result of it, yeah, no, and I agree, it's city property, and therefore all things should go through the city.
But that's gonna be your broadest
Yeah,
area to capture designers who are interested in doing that project.
right.
I guess you could go out and solicit on your own. Would you mind giving me a quote? But I don't know what they would be
No.
quoting. You need a
Neither would
description.
I,
or-
neither would I.
No,
I
that's
guess,
why
I guess the description is provide, you know, preservation and restoration services.
Well, somebody's gotta give you in the procurement department, they have to give, you have to give them a description.
Right,
That's right.
exactly.
So somebody's
Exactly.
gonna have to do that.
I'll do that.
And, you know, what was I gonna say, something to what he said?
Actually, the city would walk you through it because it's part of
And-
property.
And just to take a step back for a second, you're asking this committee to approve an application, recommend funding to the city council for $25,000, which is contingent upon a procurement process which comes in under that $25,000. But you do have to have funding before you can go out for a bid.
Yeah.
So you need the funding in order to be able to go out to a bid, if
Correct.
that statement is,
That is correct, but
so,
typically, starting from scratch like this, you can ask for funding just for your designer. Because it's usually a percentage of the project, but I don't know, it's such a specialized project. So I think, you know, your designer or architect or specialist would probably need $5,000 to $10,000 to outline what you need and get your big documents, they do all the documents and all the administrative work. Then, at that point, you have an actual dollar amount for what you're looking for.
Correct, right, to do the work.
So this is kind
To
of
do the work.
vague, but
To
if
do the
you,
work.
so just cut it down to your
But
designer
this
or
is-
architect.
this is that's what you're talking about the same thing, right?
Exactly.
You're
Yeah.
saying
Exactly.
hire a preservationist to come up with a plan,
Yeah,
Yes.
and you think that will cost less than $25,000 for them to come up with a plan,
Yes.
and then we'll have a plan, the city will own a plan that they can put out to bid and get
Exactly.
proposals to restore it, not to study the restoration and come up with a budget for it, but to actually do the work. So
Right.
it's a two-step process.
Yes.
But I
Makes
thought
sense
that-
to
You
me.
can't do architecture.
I thought that Mike, you said that you were not, that you would then raise funds separately for the actual restoration process.
If we have a plan of attack, I'd rather not, we have many good projects in front of us. I'd rather not come back here for the work, money to do the work, the actual work. I'm hoping I can get state money from various historical societies to actually pay for that, so I don't have to come back here for another request,
The project before us is just to do the study.
just to do the study, that's it.
And develop a scope of work.
Correct.
If we can figure out how to do it, if we go forward with this, the answer would be that we would do the grant and commit the funds, allowing you to go out to bid,
Right.
contingent upon or getting an acceptable response under the contract amount. And that way, you know, we would have satisfied the legal requirement that you have the fund to go out to bid.
Yes.
And, you know, we could specify what it is we want in terms of services.
Yes. I would,
So that's what you're, yes.
right, I would write that up, working with the department, working with the purchasing department, I would compose what I think, whatever is needed, they would complement that, or anybody in the city department could complement that to be more specific. And then send it out to these various architectural historians, if you will, preservationists, and ask for a proposal. And see what they'll charge us to do this work, to restore the statue. It's just a study.
I just have a question for Amy. Is there a, you know, we can't really do architects, can we, or can we? And if we can't, is there other titles like preservationist? Can we do preservationist work?
When you say do, you mean can we fund it?
Yes, can we fund it? Yeah, can we fund actual architectural work? I mean, I thought that
What
was.
is the Boy Scout? Most proposals are gonna have architects involved in it. Mike's sitting here, I mean, and YMCA was sitting here, they
Yeah, but
didn't
we
just draw that on
told-
their own.
We told Mike he couldn't do an
Yeah.
architect,
No, that was a feasibility study, right?
but this is a feasibility study.
No, it's
On
a,
the historical.
it's a restoration, it's procurement of a restoration plan.
Yeah, kind of like the same question.
Which words.
Well, look, let's,
Well,
let's,
yes,
let's,
let's say
that's,
we-
let,
Amy, you look into that,
Let's-
because just to make sure we're doing the right thing here, that's all, just to make sure.
Right.
It's been funded before by community
You
preservation.
mean, are you asking, can we hire a person like
Yeah,
he's
can we
talking about?
hire
I believe
someone
we
to do a
can,
study?
because
We
the
can.
study is part of the
Restoration
process,
study,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
well, let's just,
Yes, we can.
But it's part of the process, but we're not doing the whole process.
Right, but even if you're not doing, but
Okay.
I can double check.
Yeah.
well,
I
because
just
it could
wanna
come in
know.
at, it could come, it could
The
come in
process
at
itself.
$50,000, or it could come in at $10 million, you know, this is how you find out.
Yeah,
But
or
the-
it could
whether
be
it's-
8,000 and we would be good to go.
Yes.
We don't know until we do it, it sounds like.
Exactly.
All right, anything else?
Okay.
Any other, anybody?
Just quick on architecture, I had to rack my memory a little bit to recall why that was a problem last year. So we were in a historic category, and so it could only be spent on historic work, which was very
Yeah.
difficult to parse out with the kind of project that
Right,
originally
that's
brought in. So it had to do with the category of work we were looking for, not whether an architect could be hired or not.
That's true, that was the issue.
This isn't historic?
This is historic,
Yeah,
but
but
with
it's
his
exclusively
project,
historic.
he wanted to hire an architect to do not just historic work, but other work, and that's why we couldn't
Right.
fund that.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else? Any other? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Park and Rec, Merrifield and Jones Point. Terry Sheppard requesting $200,000, $100,000 for each park, correct?
No. I have two submissions.
Oh, 200,
210.
200
One
for,
is 200.
sorry, 200 for
Jones Point Park.
Jones Point and 210 for Merrifield. Almost shorted to 210 right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
Sorry about that.
Have you all seen the original application?
Yes.
Because it's back in here, but there's a few pictures.
Are
Yeah,
you gonna do
I,
them both together, or are you gonna do?
Yep. well,
Okay.
yes,
Whatever you want, whatever works for you.
because I can always prioritize for you. If you don't, if we have to pick one park, I would tell you which one.
You're gonna tell us now, or are you gonna wait till the end?
Well, I'm just, I can only do one thing at a time. Otherwise I'll mess this up.
Are you taking it? I just don't have a paper.
Make the way.
You have one?
Yep, I submitted two proposals, basically for new playground installations at Mayerfield and Jones Point. If need be, I would pick just one project as a priority, and that would be Mayerfield. Mayerfield is a small baseball diamond on Westfield Road. It's been there for a very, very long time. I have pictures of how it is right now. It is basically just a small 60-foot diamond that youth baseball plays on, that gets the most use.
What did you say, sorry?
It's a 60-foot baseball diamond that Holyoke youth baseball plays on. Youth soccer has played there, a few other organized groups, but not a whole lot, because basically the only thing there is a baseball diamond. Probably about 20 years ago, this little piece of play equipment was installed with a swing set that never should have. It was a fine little piece of equipment in its day, but there's no protective surfacing, there's just nothing accessible about it. I don't know really why it was installed, but it was.
So Councilor David Bartley, this is Ward 3 in the city, has been asking for many, many years to work on having a safe play area for the neighborhood kids. I say Ward 3 because there's not a lot of other playgrounds or parks around it. McMahon School is close by, Community Field is close by, but kids in this neighborhood don't really have a walking, safe park to play in. Mayor Field, it's not big and it's not really pedestrian friendly. So I wouldn't request a giant play space and water spray that hundreds of kids would come to because there's absolutely no parking. When baseball is playing in the spring, if you drive by, there's cars all over. Many city, well, 2, 3 city engineers have tried to rectify that. There's just no space without going into the park. So I've worked with the city engineer on this. There's very little we can do to improve the parking. We hopefully could improve the walkways a little bit to get there. I don't think it would be massively used. I think it would be used during games, but I do think neighborhood people would use it. You had asked for it to quantify, and I honestly don't know. I know that there's people in the park a lot, walking dogs, and when they're not playing, and fathers and sons having passes and catches. Only, I think, because there is nothing else there. And there hasn't been anything else there. So I don't know a lot about usage other than I think it would be used. So I'm glad that the Y came in with their proposal. They talked a little about what we'd be trying to do. If you keep going, the original proposal is here, but at the very end, I have, the last few sheets are color printouts of what we would hope to install. It's the same piece of equipment, just from 2 different angles. And this,
Excuse me, I'm sorry, do you have the Jones Point one? Because I only have the Mayor Field one.
yep, Jones Point.
Well, you probably would have wanted one.
Jones Point.
In my case,
Thank you.
Mayor Field.
Maybe it's,
Oh, okay.
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 So-
One packet here.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, no, I did it, not you.
so, you get to the green, the very end of it is what we're proposing to do. It's the same playscape and play feature, just from different angles. I don't even have an exact location for it. And this is the equipment that I probably would choose. In your proposal, the cost of the equipment is here, $52,000, including delivery, for the equipment here. Parks buys their equipment off a state list. And there are different variations of this setup. So this wouldn't be carved in stone, the actual equipment. But that's the dollar amount we would probably stick with, or close to.
Is there enough room for all that?
Yep,
there
this was
besides
done-
playing baseball?
Yes. This, whenever there's park work, big park work like this, I do work with a playground, they're specialists, they're salesmen and specialists. They're certified playground operators. We have one on our staff, but they know the dimensions and everything is spaced far enough apart. Yes, there is enough room to be up to code. A lot of the cost here is for surfacing and to have it accessible. The Y talked about, this is a wood carpet underneath for the surface, and that is fine. Poured in place rubber is what makes things more accessible or totally accessible, and it's wildly, wildly expensive.
It's going to get worse.
Yes, yes,
There's another shortage.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. It is the best product for safety and making things accessible.
When you say making it accessible, do you mean accessible for people with disabilities?
Yes. Mayor Field, if I had my brothers, I would put the playground down the farthest end in the field, closer to where the houses are. Just not close to the road. I would try to get it back as far as we could. So that would mean an asphalt walkway would be fine to get to it. Poured in place rubber at access points on this structure, on this playground, would need a wheelchair could pull up to get to the handicap accessible. That's where, you know, playgrounds weren't really designed very well 10, 20 years ago. This is totally accessible, but there's no porta place rubber in the design. So, okay, a child, or anybody could get up to the walkway, okay, but then what? How do you get to the play or the swings? So porta place rubber is really what brings the cost up a lot, just to get to.
And is it true that there really are no handicapped accessible playgrounds or recreational space in Holyoke? That's what someone told me.
Absolutely not.
Oh, there are.
All the parks are handicap accessible. Right now, we meet all the ADA standards.
Okay.
We're just delving more into the porta place rubber. We're up to code.
Okay.
Almost everywhere. Not the crazy structures that are there now. They're no. The porta place rubber is good because it lets a child get up to the structure. So, also, what really jacks up the cost a lot is, okay, so you can have an accessible swing, a wheelchair, and you can even do a lift and porta place rubber there, that's great. But if this child wanted to get to here, unless there's asphalt, they can't to another part of the playground. So porta place rubber actually allows that for a kid to travel.
Is
to
this
playground.
picture showing
Is
porta
there-
place?
No, none at all.
This is the wood.
No,
This is
that's
all wood chip. There's no porta place and there's no asphalt in the design. I've worked with the city engineer to get the accurate cost on where we would have the asphalt and the porta place rubber.
So the
To make it
budget-
totally accessible. That's why it's like, woo.
Well, I'm noticing that in the quote from Emmy O'Brien and Sons,
Yeah.
it does say port in place surfacing from
Yep.
Surface America
Yeah,
for $63,000 and change.
Yep. Yep.
So the goal for like the full restoration of Mayor Field would be to have a port in place.
partial. It wouldn't be, this whole thing wouldn't be all rubber. We would still have the wood chips in, they call them fall zones, like under the swings, probably would still be wood chips. Cause otherwise I think we'd be looking at about $600,000. Yeah, so it'd be mostly for access points and to make things truly accessible for people in wheelchairs or with
Okay.
other disabilities. I would love to have it all port in place, but at least it would be, much more accessible than what we have. And the same for the Jones Point, you'll see. So that's basically, Mayor. Mayor would be my first choice. There is a cute little field and it's a nice field. There's field improvements in here that's pretty low at $5,000. That's basically, there's a word for it, but basically making the field flat and maybe some reseeding because there's a lot of lips in the actual playing field.
Would you be taking out the equipment that you have here and putting it, and I'm just curious.
We wouldn't be using that equipment. Rarely do we take equipment out and replace it, it would be new equipment.
Right, so it would be new equipment, but what I was gonna ask you is there a particular problem with that equipment that you wouldn't wanna just add to?
Yes.
Or what is the
It's
particular?
very old and outdated, and it's not up to any code.
Certainly is.
Yeah, it's very old and
It
outdated.
doesn't make kids wanna go there.
No, it doesn't.
Is it like the
Did it
materials
ever?
or just the way it looks?
I don't know.
Like what makes it that way? Is it like something like falling apart?
Oh, yeah, it's that, yes. The material probably is okay, but all playground equipment, there's standards for, like, the stairs and openings and to make sure somebody can't stick their head through something. And
Oh, okay,
it's all out of code that way.
okay.
Can I ask a question? If Mayor Field is your first choice, my concern about Mayor Field, of course, is the crossing that street, Westfield Road, to get there.
Me too.
And I'm wondering if people will take that chance, even if you fix it all up and we spend the money, are the people from all in that whole division in there, are they gonna cross that street and go there? I mean, I don't know, they might, if they're adults, are with them, but, I mean, I don't know.
It's my concern, it's always been my concern.
So why is Mayor Field your first? George's Point?
Because I think there's a need, and there's people who use the park now.
Okay.
It's not creating a whole new park. I wouldn't want to make it too attractive with a water spray just for that reason, a water spray, because that would draw more kids, especially older kids walking. I would keep this geared towards younger kids, probably 8 and under. That's basically what this is. I wouldn't gear the equipment for kids over 10, because those kids usually walk on their own.
Yeah,
It is a gamble. It is.
Yeah, the thing about George's Point, it's a little bit safer down there,
It's a lot more.
so that, I'm just curious why Mayor would be your first choice, that's all. Just because it needs to work more than George's Point?
It needs a field work, but we could do that in-house, basically because there's not anything there, and there's nothing in the immediate neighborhood either. McMahon is the nearest play facility school,
Yeah.
and that's not in great shape either.
Okay.
So I think there's a need. I don't think there's much in the neighborhood, but I would definitely keep it geared for younger children. And I have asked the engineer's office to help with the pedestrian walkway, but there's not a whole lot they really could do. Yeah,
So put a blinking yellow
a
light.
blinking yellow light,
Like
but
they have over in South Hadley for the college kids.
I'm not sure that's a deterrent,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it is a risk.
Yeah.
I think it would be used heavily, like, right off the bat, but in general, I'm not sure. There's kids in the park now. I don't know if you noticed, like I noticed, I always look to see who's there, but there's usually somebody there, even if and it's usually a parent and child walking or, I don't
No,
know.
you have directly back of the park, there's a whole swath of houses
Right.
Yeah,
that you can walk to.
Yeah.
I don't know how many streets there is, a whole intertwined of.
I know.
of
That's the
streets and
backyard of a
houses.
lot of houses, too,
Yeah.
so I really don't know.
Yeah, you don't have to cross Westfield Road to get to it, there's a whole other army of houses.
No, but I am
directly
afraid
behind.
there will be a lot of kids doing it, but,
Well,
So
it is a reality, we
yeah,
can't change
it's
the
a risk
world.
that
Is there a possibility of working with the city around safety and access in terms
Yeah.
of crossing the road? What's your thoughts about that?
I don't think much else will happen.
Yeah.
The engineer has helped me with this, and he checked over the figures. I don't think there is a whole lot to be done. We could make the gate that's in one of the original pictures look a little better, we can be better, or maintain the sidewalk a little better, but it's the road. I don't know that a yellow light would even help.
Is there a sidewalk on
What
that
you
side of the road?
need is a pedestrian bridge.
No, not,
Road is a small,
it's very small,
Right,
it's a
yeah,
right.
walking path.
probably not handicap accessible, I don't think it's that wide enough. But that we could fix with an asphalt sidewalk.
So, potential use of the park, right? And this is a bill that they will come kind of an idea to some extent. I'm just wondering whether the neighborhood has engaged with you at all about, we really want
A
a
little
new
bit.
park here.
Only a
you
little
know,
bit,
and that- 'cause
there-
are there a lot of kids there?
David
Young
Barkley
kids?
has been a ferocious advocate
Well,
for years.
and that's his job, so I
It
get,
is,
you know,
it is.
so
It is.
besides David, I'm just wondering whether, like,
A
I grew up in that
tremendous-
neighborhood. We're by McMahon School, and there were all those neighborhoods were loaded with kids. I don't know if that's still true, and I wonder whether it is, and I wonder whether people are banging on the door saying,
No,
fix our parks.
no,
But
No.
weren't you talking about getting community input in some way?
Yes.
Or
There,
process?
it is used heavily during the spring and summer by Holyoke Youth Baseball.
Yeah,
There's been parents, oh, wouldn't it be nice if,
yeah.
and you actually got a little input tonight about toddler areas. We have areas that are geared to small children, but not really toddlers.
Right,
It's usually 8 and under,
right.
so,
I mean,
no, we
No, I
haven't
just-
had people banging
I
on the
mean-
door. I haven't because I'm not sure about the safety of getting
right.
into the park.
So,
It's, go ahead, after.
just to back up a little, same question that we've been asking all night. If we can fund part of this, because 210 is a lot.
Yep.
Are there useful chunks of this that could be carved out
Yes.
and we can address?
Yes. Yes, this could be scaled down. I would definitely eliminate some of the smaller pieces of equipment, which would scale down the area and the wood chips and even the rubber.
Because I was thinking of this and the baseball diamond. Once the baseball diamond doesn't need anything.
The baseball diamond needs to be flattened out. If the work would be done in-house,
Oh, okay, so that's not
I
really
think
part
the
of this ask.
5,000
This is the
5,000.
big.
oh yeah, if the
This is the
baseball
big
improvement
part.
is the 5,000, I think
Okay.
new sod probably would be purchased.
Okay, but virtually all of it is really this piece of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
For,
thanks.
virtually. If it had to be scaled down, I would eliminate a lot of these single pieces. I would definitely keep a swing with accessible seats, and I would definitely keep a play skate. But the smaller pieces, no, I wouldn't. I would actually create a toddler area like the earlier folks were talking about.
Is there an advantage to doing all of the poured rubber at one time?
Yes.
Okay.
If there's an advantage to doing it all at once, except for buying the equipment, because that's, we don't go out to bid.
So phasing this really wouldn't make sense, because you want to get the rubber done all in one pour for maximum.
Yeah. But if a lot of these smaller pieces are eliminated, which would be fine, that would mean a lot less pouring. Because if you only have two sites to go to, you wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't have as much for the rubber. There wouldn't be that many access points you would need.
So these are the smaller pieces you refer to?
Yep. This is the play structure, the play skate, the big one with the roof over it. And there's a lot of variations, but basically that, and these are the swings. All this stuff in the middle is braid, and it could be chopped off one by one, we could make it smaller.
But really, we're talking about, I mean, this is not, you can do the whole project readily in bits and pieces. It is, or you do a whole project at once, and it can be made smaller as a project, but it really makes no sense to do
Some of it,
a
no.
third of it a year.
Some of it, no. We've done many parts in phases, and I just get really leery because things change in a year, administrations change in a year, and,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
But this is, I would prefer to keep this a small area for small children. So yes, it could be done in phases. If it stayed this size, there's not a lot of shade
Yeah.
anywhere. So eventually, the next phase would be to find some kind of a shade structure.
Okay, right, so this basically is phase one,
Yeah.
ideally.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, and this is ideal.
So, and how about the tree program that the conservation is doing? Would that be a great way to go for shade? And the
Partially.
trees are free. And
Yep, and they
we
plant
do
around,
plant them.
oh, they wouldn't plant in this, I don't think it's a low-income area.
It's not in the zone.
Yeah,
Oh, it's not. in the
So-
zone.
and they planted plenty, but
This is
they're
not
pretty
a
small
low
when they get planted.
It's not in the
Correct.
zone.
Oh.
We're trying to get a lot more in this field
So,
Neither is Jones.
And keep the CHED money.
so you have to remove the existing
Yeah,
play
and that could be
structure
done in-house, with the DPW.
and replace it with
I would see
Oh.
that area.
modern,
Yes, yes, that has to be just removed.
if you don't get funding, right, the existing structures,
No, that would be the
you're gonna take it down anyway.
Yes, that's,
I mean,
it's illegal.
we've touched on it a little bit earlier, you know, if I lived in that neighborhood and I had young kids, I'd be sitting over there saying, I want this to get
I know.
funded. And I think that, you know, that's a message to the community that if you would like to see any of these projects funded, they should be expressing their support for it. Because it is really difficult for us to stand there, so to prioritize a project to spend $210,000 and then not have anybody use it, because, you know, I mean, not that nobody's gonna use it, but have, you know, that's a hard,
But they should come and support it,
Well, you know.
or at least make it known that they would like to use it.
Yeah, they don't even know that
There's
this
not
is a
even anybody
possibility.
here.
this is my
Not a
point, this
lot.
is, I'm just, you know, it's,
Aren't we gonna do the public presentation like we did last year?
that's what we're
This
doing
is
right
what
now.
this is.
No, like we did this in-house last year, and then we went to the senior center and invited the public and all that kind of stuff, and
I don't know.
people
Yes,
brought in
that's true.
supporters.
We did a whole
We brought in,
public hearing.
they brought in supporters, and that would be their chance to, to find out. Send some flyers out and say, we're thinking of doing this,
Well, we'll talk about that at the next meeting, like what we do
It's already
from this
listed.
point on, but the public is invited to come.
well, not really, we
Yeah.
advertised
Yeah.
and everything
The new
last
stuff
year,
that comes in.
for people to
But
come.
we
didn't.
did,
ran around.
we ran around, I ran around too, so did you. We
put
put
flyers
flyers
in
everywhere.
So now we're getting, look, let's come back, otherwise we're gonna be here till 2 in the morning. We'll come back to,
Parks and Rec is governed by a three-member commission, not right at the moment, but, Parks prioritized their projects a few years ago. This, Mayor Field made it to the priority list, as did Jones Point and Kennedy Field. When CPA came along, we said, woo-hoo, we have a whole list of things we could prioritize.
sure,
But Parks would also have a public meeting, a regular, posted to gather more input. I wouldn't have dreamed to have people come in, because I put 2 parks in too, so. But it would be done at some point.
well, I mean,
That
we'll
would
see
be
the chicken
useful
and the egg,
I
right?
agree,
Yeah.
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 No, I agree with that.
Because if you had letters of support from the community, that
Or,
would be
I
very
mean,
valuable.
Do you know when the structure at Jones Point Park will be removed due to lack of safety?
At Jones Point?
well,
No.
We're still in Mayor Field right now. Or Mayor
let's
Park.
figure, so anything else on Mayor Field, and we'll jump
Okay.
anything else, any other
Oh,
comments, questions?
just following up on what Mimi asked, would it be possible for you, Terry, to submit a partial request like you were talking about? So we could get an idea, that could be an alternative,
Yeah.
just in case.
Is Jones Point, is there something broken? Or is it just old?
I won't let my son go up the stairs anymore,
Okay. Because they're old.
because they're starting to be disconnected, the middle.
Well, it's old.
It's old, yeah.
We can remove it at any time.
That's a great segue to your new proposal here for Jones Point Park.
It is, it was
Apparently
installed,
one advocate,
it was installed in
Not necessarily.
1994, 95. Kennedy,
1994, you said.
94, 95, Mayor Danny Sabbs was mayor. He allotted the funds then. This would be our park's second priority to replace the playground equipment there. It's in a great spot, it's gated, it's just old. Jones Point is Oxford Road, yeah.
Oxford Road.
It's beautiful, it's a beautiful gem, the tennis courts were redone. Kennedy Park on Lincoln Street was done around 2001. That, I think, is just dangerous. We can't even find the right parts to replace it, and it's, which our priorities were made before we realized we couldn't fix it, but I didn't know, I can have the guys look at it, but I know it's just old, it should just be
It's
removed.
getting there.
Yeah. Same, Jones Point, I don't know that you would see this next year because I think Kennedy Park needs more assistance quicker. It would just be updating, the layouts there, and just updating.
Do they have any sports?
At Jones Point?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
The city just rebuilt the tennis courts there, they're beautiful.
baseball, soccer.
Yeah.
There's soccer and there's baseball.
Oh, okay.
It's a neighborhood park, but
And
it's
terrible
pretty heavily
basketball
used.
court.
Yes, that should be taken out. It's just should be taken out. The basketball court. It's in really rough shape. Or redone, but I don't know, the neighbors would go for that. Maybe,
It's a great spot, but
no.
It really gets used.
Yeah, it does. Where?
I do that one.
it does get used.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Go down
Yeah.
there any summer evening, and it is packed. Parents, small children, larger children, teenagers.
Mostly down to the river.
parts of this that
Absolutely.
you didn't consider?
There's not actually a whole lot I would change, it would just be the elimination of equipment. And I included a picture in here of the entrance. There would be a lot of work that would need to be done, paved sidewalks and again with the porta place rubber, so you could access once there.
Okay, sidewalk would be inside the park.
Inside and getting to it, I thought I put the entrance, you have to walk into the park, which is not paved.
And what you can do outside the park, do you?
Oh, it's still park, it's
It's
park
still park,
property.
okay,
The
that's-
playground area is already fenced in,
Okay,
but to even get to the fenced in area, it's not great,
okay.
but it's all park property.
Okay.
Then after we do all the parks, I'd like to come back to you every year and ask to have bathrooms built at all the parks.
Right.
Yeah, porta potties are not safe either. No matter, no. Long term.
Are there currently porta potties?
There's
Thank
porta
goodness
potties
for
in any
CBA.
park that has a playing field,
Yeah.
but they're certainly not monitored and there's just a lot of bad
So
activity.
do these have porta potties?
Mayor Field does when baseball season, and yes, don't point to
They
them.
both do.
They're just not safe.
Yeah.
Well, you need about $5 million by my account for what you're,
Yes,
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
oh, they're way behind, just like every other
Like
department.
so, and like so many other cities.
yeah. Community development is great, the lower wards right now, and schools. We're actually building a new playground at Ian White School right now through community development. And there's an application in this year for a new playground at Donnie Block.
Yeah.
Donnie School,
Donnie.
yeah, but no
That's great.
bathrooms there, not yet.
so that's funded through community development block
That is.
grants.
That is.
So the problem with these other parks is they don't
They're
qualify
not
for that
low
funding.
income, right. And Ian White School certainly isn't, it's not a low income neighborhood, but, for the first time, Alicia Zola, the director, got the okay through HUD because the students
Oh,
who
nice.
attend the school, they base it on their income. Thank you, Donnie.
That's good.
Anybody, further comments or questions? Thank you. I wish we had $5 million for you.
I'll just keep coming back.
That's all right.
You and everybody else, that's the problem.
Oh, I know. Patient.
Oh yeah, Michael Moriarty is gonna come in here and ask for some money too.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Michael, you have a home ownership project
I do indeed.
under housing. $199,101 request.
Nice round number.
I like it.
And I've got a PowerPoint, and that is designed to try to keep you in the 5 minutes because you're asking out of Holyoke Irish, and that's a
Yeah,
Brutal.
well, we've not been close tonight. We did a much better job last week.
No.
Okay, I'll put that in.
This room makes us
But
less formal.
there's been a lot of information tonight, so it's been good. Yeah, I don't think we've only wasted a little time.
Isabel's putting her two front teeth. She's been making them pull up.
Oh, boy, that's deadly.
So close.
How's that try?
Almost right.
Years ago, my stepmother used to have paracord for her stomach, so she used to say, yeah, just put rubber on my his tooth is so he used to love that stuff. That's how I got it. Yeah, come on. I used to
And
love the ice cream.
what's the problem with the play skate? There's,
Yeah.
so it's just like sharp, like there's sharp objects.
I know Kathy was able to
Just,
navigate.
oh,
Because
No, I don't need to.
goes down.
I just need to get a flash drive, otherwise I do have my laptop, I can attach that.
Oh, it's like delaminated.
It's not only completely
So-
down
so,
to metal, it's not.
I'm here, you can see it on the screen.
Oh, so.
I would normally go here to open up that, and it's not when I get to all the drives.
How come all these projects have place gaps that are 20 years old? 20 years ago, where they have negative. It does make you wonder.
Where did the money come from 20 years ago? They just gave her.
Look at that.
Right,
Okay.
all of them.
Maybe it was the
Of course,
90s,
people
it was
say
the
20.
90s tech boom.
Yeah,
Yeah, people say 20s, 20 years ago, but it could be 30, it just feels like it was 20.
Wait, where's There's pineapple. Is this 127?
So I used up my 5 minutes loading up the PowerPoint, I'll just go home.
I haven't hit the button yet.
We did it one time.
I'm sorry?
I said I haven't hit the start button under 5 minutes yet.
Because, yes.
What's going on? Is it, what is it, online? Or it's,
No, it's on this flash drive. It's just the same PDF in front of me, just to give it one more shot, and I'll just work out the data. Oh, good. Promising.
I haven't had more than cover if I've ever been asleep for like 5 minutes. You
Okay.
all right, ready?
might be sleeping this for other parties.
You know what? As long as I can see it, don't have to worry. Okay, good. Okay,
As soon as you stopped worrying about it, it popped up.
yeah. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I'm not going to spend much time talking about OneHolyoke Community Development Corporation, because you know us very well, I think, all of you. For the public, we're the only certified community development corporation in the city of Holyoke, and we do a wide range of work beyond housing, but tonight's conversation about housing, which is really our core work and our legacy. And so I'm really happy to make a presentation to you tonight about trying to bring CPA into the work that we do. So we have over a 50-year legacy of successfully delivering duplex homes into Holyoke, and it is actually a home ownership model that I want to discuss with you rather than a type of building. So just making the case, home ownership, in our experience, is the most effective family asset building tool that is available to lift up families who struggle. The main reason being that they have the opportunity to build equity that generates genuine wealth, as opposed to, for instance, subsidized rental, which provides housing for a family and allows them to manage their household dollars, but leaves nothing for them at the end of their time. So that's always been an important core reason why we consider ourselves first and foremost a home ownership supporting organization. Commitment to long-term ownership stabilizes neighborhoods, and we work primarily in the Flats, South Holyoke, Churchill, and the downtown neighborhood, and we've built housing in all of those neighborhoods over the years. We have infilled blocks in the Flats in a way that's actually changed the footprint of the neighborhood. In recent years, the site we're talking about is very much an area that we focused and done a lot of work in, and want to continue to do that. Selling 2 units, that's one thing that differentiates our model from other home ownership programs. When I talk about the number of units created, you always have to remember that every duplex is 2 units. And the reason we do that, and we sell it to a single homeowner, is that that is also part of the asset building and stabilizing. We only get 50% home ownership with what we build. That's certainly the case. We do typically put a restriction on requiring that the homeowner, for the same number of years that they commit to being an owner-occupant, provide their apartment to affordable home ownership. And that's usually driven by the subsidies that we have received in past years. It says you have to do that. CPA doesn't have those same requirements, yet we would want to do that. We really do feel the dearth of homeownership overall needs to be addressed. So we really would not be looking at trying to make a market rate rental alongside of the affordable homeowner, but within reason, as I can discuss later. The other thing that's really important is that we're here for the long term. So when we put a restriction on the property, we want that, and we put a variety of restrictions. You want to check with us when you turn over tenancies to make sure that you've got your qualified tenant, and you certify it with us every year. If you want to make any changes or improvements on the property, we've got building restrictions, so you need to come back and see us again about that. And obviously, if something happens in your life circumstances where staying the 15 years isn't possible, you need to come and see us, because that's at the very heart of the restriction. The good news about that is that ongoing relationship allows our office with a very experienced staff to provide a lot of informal financial counseling, get people to the right places to resolve problems, whether it is with a home warranty or whether it's with distress with their mortgage. So we like doing the home ownership in part because we're not just building and gone. We remain connected to the family and the property for many years to come afterwards, and that's something we'd never give up. So why this location in particular? Well, the most simple reason is we own it, but also this location has a couple of things that we think are important. It's on Dwight Street, which is a major thoroughfare to our city hall and into our downtown business center. And this stretch of Dwight Street, starting from Beach and going all the way down to about Suffolk or Chestnut, has a great deal of vacancy and need for infill. So that is one of the things that makes us feel that we should prioritize this. We own about 10 buildable lots located in different areas throughout the city. This is the first one we're bringing forward because we really feel this is a key location for the benefit of the city. But in addition to that, we know that the work we've done with duplex housing fits the immediate environment very, very well. And one of the things we did, you'll note on this map, these are actually two different parcels. This house no longer stands. It shows in the picture from the assessor's map, but it had a fire, and it was abandoned by the owner, who didn't even have the willingness to tear down what was left of the place. We absorbed that cost in acquiring this lot. And then we exchanged this lot with the city for another lot that was not buildable down in the South Holyoke neighborhood. The reason we wanted to compile these two, technically, we could put a two-family house just on this one lot. The problem is, we could never satisfy the code requirements for off-street parking. We would be forced to only do a one-family house, so we could only need to have one parking space, but we still have a problem with that. This lot's landlocked. It would be nearly impossible for us to make any sort of a lot that would, or any sort of a driveway that would get a car in there. By having these two, number one, we now have about 70 feet of frontage, which is a much more comfortable size space. And it fits the neighborhood this way. If you look up here and you keep going, you'll see there is some side lot space from house to house. You do not see that here, and you wouldn't have seen that even when there was a house standing. We actually think Dwight Street will be a little bit more presentable by mirroring the amount of side lot with the new property that we put in. The other thing is you will not see any parking from the street. This is a city alley that has to be left passable. That's one of the requirements for alleyway rights throughout the city, which allows us to simply provide parking access from the side of the alley, almost like it's street parking. One of the questions that was sent to me was whether there was any requirement for sidewalks or walkways. There are not. We think we would probably keep to a close frontage because we want to keep the streetscape consistent. And that allows us to simply make a driveway off the alleyway. We don't have to do anything with sidewalks. There's already a city sidewalk there. So then we're infilling a vacant lot. We think that's always very important for neighborhood improvement. We know that the property is zoned for exactly what we're putting here, so it's absolutely a building of right, no issues in that area. And it aligns with Holyoke's urban redevelopment plan very specifically. If you go back to the Redevelopment Authority's website, you will see that there is a Dwight Street gateway area that has this footprint, starts with Beach Street.
these highlighted lots are actually, let me find the right ones, Beach Street. Yes, these highlighted lots are actually our properties. And so the language in the plan very specifically says, recommendations include the acquisition of vacant lots, we've done that, combining lots where necessary to create larger parcels, and then selling the lots to be redeveloped for mixed residential and retail use that is in the same scale and character as the abutting neighborhood, along with accessory uses. So obviously this isn't mixed development, but we think that language actually speaks to what you would hope would happen as you keep going down Dwight Street, and that here it would fit. So in other words, we're actually carrying out something that is directly aligned and specifically mapped in the city's redevelopment plan. We think that's a pretty important feature here. These are the sort of building designs that we typically do. These are some of the last 4 houses that we've done. We've done work directly in this neighborhood. 232 Beach Street was an overgrown illegal dump a half a block away from Wisteriahurst when we acquired that lot. We actually had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars just to get all the garbage out of there. People were driving from the alley behind it. There was a lot of construction waste, apartment couches, tires, you name it. This is what you see there now, and it was sold to a family that still lives and thrives there. 98 Lyman Street was actually built many, many years ago. This does demonstrate, I picked this one just to demonstrate, we will work with the committee and with the neighborhood to look at alternative choices in terms of facade. That is a cost factor, and that can drive what we have to do. But we've done brick before, we can do brick again. You will find, as with most affordable housing, you'll get it on the front. The house still tends to stay on the side. And again, it's a cost factor. We can do different kinds of features and designs. This is Harrison Avenue, right around the corner from Myrtle. And we did that, I think, about 6 or 7 years ago. And then a pretty straightforward kind of cake, which is on 294 Chestnut Street. So one of the things I've certainly been committed to doing since taking the helm at OneHolyoke is we do walk the neighborhood, we do reach out to neighbors. We want to incorporate in the building design as much sensitivity as we possibly can to the immediate surrounding environment. And so we show you, we have those capacities. So the next thing is, why are we seeking funding from the Community Preservation Act? The state and federal funding that used to allow us to do this at some reasonable scale is still in existence, but just does not provide the amount of resources that we're able to use. In 2008, the home partnership funding from the federal government that comes through our Office of Community Development was slashed in half. As a result, if you look back in the first decade of this century, we generated about 40 units of affordable homeownership housing. Again, remember those units mean half of them are rented. We did 8 in the decade that just ended. And that was purely because the resources were not there. Because they're half of what they were, they are actually intensely more competitive than they used to be. And it just shrank our scale. So I have always looked diligently for any new resources that come along that would allow us to resume what we consider our core and most important work. And the CPA seems like a natural place for us to try to replace what the federal government used to provide for many years. The state does have some new funding with the housing bond bill that came a few years ago, but what we're finding is that it's extremely competitive and that some of the restrictions they're requiring are actually more than we're willing to build with. As an example, there was something that looked kind of promising to do some townhouses a couple of years ago, but they wanted a 50-year restriction. That actually has an impact on the entire neighborhood's housing values over a period of time. To make sure you get the value of your subsidy, you need a period of time, but we do not favor it existing indefinitely because A, it harms the assessed values for everyone in the neighborhood, B, it undermines our goal of providing that asset for the family and the wealth building outcome that you want to have. And so we passed. We're not going to do a 50-year, and so the state resource turned out not to be a resource that matched our mission. OneHolyoke has years of experience managing these projects. We've never had a project fail. We can tailor restrictions to match all of CPA's rules and local needs. There's actually a ton more flexibility in what can be done with CPA than what we normally face when we're dealing with CDGB or home partnership funding. And so that is actually an opportunity to have a dialogue where we find out what people want. We definitely want to restrict pricing. We do not want to provide a subsidized home to a millionaire. We want to make sure it's a house that somebody who otherwise couldn't have one gets one. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be tagged to a specific percentage because the federal government says so. We can be thinking more rationally about what income levels look right to bolstering our own neighborhoods. Maybe thinking about what maybe municipal salary levels look like and what would make sense there. Who will the home buyer be? Well, definitely incumbents restricted, as I just said, but could be available to higher workforce levels. We do the work to vet people for credit worthiness, and we require that they take both first-time home buyer classes and rental management courses, and Wayfinders has one that's been developed for many, many years that's top of the line. You can't buy one of our houses without doing that first, and the reason why is we want you to be successful. We want you to know what you're getting into. It's not for the faint of heart, this landlord business. OneHolyoke has years of experience managing open, equitable application processes. We've never been hit with a fair housing violation in the way that we manage this stuff. We've never been sued over the way we deal with it. We use tried and true mechanisms every time. So we would just do the same as we've done with all of our prior home ownerships because we know it works and it's fair. Obviously, only one person can buy it. We're going to get hundreds of applicants typically. And this is my last piece, I want to introduce our partners. I had a very unexpected and welcome opportunity to engage with a segment of the community as we started this project. There's an organization based in Springfield called Leadership Pioneer Valley. We have 3 of the representatives here with us this evening, and they're going to be shadowing and supporting and organizing some of the work that we will be doing going forward. We are going to have a charrette. We think we're looking at February 27th. We'll be doing outreach to the immediate abutters and probably a block or 2 beyond that, and it'll be happening in City Hall. And that is the way that we get the list of the wants and the absolute don't want to sees that we get from the neighborhood. Do you guys each want to introduce yourself and what organizations you're from?
Sure. I'm Christine Johnston. I work at Springfield College. And I'm Michelle Roback, and I work at Holyoke Community College. I'm Melissa Karwasi. I work with Springfield Public Schools.
So this is a great, you may be familiar with Leadership Holyoke, which is where young professionals get an opportunity to learn a lot about public service, a lot about networking, and a lot about really civic engagement in government. Leadership Pioneer Valley is that and more. They've got a capstone project, and we're it. We're delighted to have them on board, and it's going to make my work a little lighter, and also it lets me do what I probably should have been doing my whole life anyway, and that is teach stuff, because I love doing that. So with that, let me turn it over to questions, because that's my entire presentation at this point.
So just the business model quickly.
Yeah.
$389,000 property after
all costs. That's all
costs.
inclusive, correct.
The CPA funds are proposed to be $199,000, which leaves a $200,000
That's right.
balance. That is what the sale price of the home is to the...
Are you familiar with the concept of subsidy stacking? That means I can seek other resources to augment this and lower that sales price. Right now, you're the first resource that we're reaching out to.
Yeah.
$200,000. Actually, people do buy houses, 2-family houses for $200,000 in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
That is the market price. The challenge comes in when the affordability restriction kicks in. Is somebody going to be able to get, say, that $190,000 mortgage to actually get in a house when their income is limited at a certain point?
Right.
And so that, I'm a little dubious of that myself. Our experience is that when we have an 80% average median income around here, our best sales price is actually more between $125,000 and $160,000. And we actually look at the 125 with people who are as low as 40% AMI. And then they have a devil of a time getting a mortgage approved. So what we will probably do is seek to augment this with home investment partnership when it comes in. so that we can lower the price even further and that way give ourselves more flexibility on home ownership. I actually think this is a kind of project, because CPA's never been tried in this community before, where there could be some room for a little bit of philanthropy outreach. And I want to try to do that anyway, because I have to do the full mix in order to get us back up to scale and doing this work on a regular basis. I want to infill all 10 of the lots we own and then go out and find 10 more. That's what I'm enthusiastic about doing.
And then their mortgage is, use the word, subsidized by the apartment that they rent, because it's a duplex. So
Correct.
they have rental income plus their own income to.
And that's part of why somebody at 80% AMI is able to qualify. They can anticipate a certain amount of annual income supporting this. As a single-family home, you could never do it to them.
Right, right.
Yeah, just doesn't work.
Now, at the end of the life of the restriction,
Yeah.
Can the owner sell at full market rate?
Yes,
And who captures that gain? Is that 100% to the owner?
it's all the owners. Our view of it is they have now put in 15 years of a portion of their income and the sweat equity of maintaining the home and managing the property, so it's fair. But in addition to that, by releasing all, oh, by the way, the building restrictions are typically 30 years. You gotta come and see us if they wanna put a pool in the backyard, up to 30 years later. But in terms of giving them the full market share value, we actually, that's at the heart of what our mission is. We want them to have that. Because what happens 15 years later? The kids are going to school.
Right, that's how they're building equity.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I am a little concerned about putting in, $200,000 of community preservation funding and expecting, yes, there are many gains to be had from infill, but all of the return on this essentially, besides the benefit to the one family and the generalized gain from helping to stabilize the neighborhood, is going to the individual homeowner.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to either recapture those funds or sell again to another relatively low-income owner, because the point is to build the individual wealth.
Right.
Okay, just wanted to get
That's
that straight.
absolutely the case, and it's a policy question. We are firmly on the side of providing the equity.
Yeah.
But they would have to have paid their mortgage off.
Oh, of course, or else they've lost the house. Right.
No, I mean.
Oh, right, yeah.
When they decide to sell.
Oh, absolutely.
In order to capture the whole amount, they'd have to pay it.
Right, and that actually is a normal scenario. 15, 20 years, the kids are grown, you want to downsize, whatever. At that point, you're paying off a decent chunk of what's left on your mortgage, because it's usually a 15-year restriction, but it's almost always a 30-year mortgage.
But if there are real gains in the housing market, say something like the hot market of the early 2000s, basically, and we're always taking risk with housing, but if there are windfall gains on this property from real estate appreciation, the homeowner gets all.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that's something that,
It's frankly a problem I wish everybody on Dwight Street could have.
yes.
So, am I missing something, or a comp for this house is probably more in line with $150,000, $175,000.
2 1/4, I'm guessing at this point.
2 1/4?
Yeah,
Okay.
because of the two-family.
So the delta,
Yep.
it's what we see in this city a lot.
Right.
Is the problem, we're upside down. It costs more to build something
Yep.
than what it's worth.
That's absolutely the case, especially in these 4 units. That's been true for 40 years. You don't see the private market coming in and doing this work because it doesn't make any economic sense. We're the only show in town.
Right, it's-
Yeah, maybe Amy, can you answer this? Didn't we have $20,000 left over last year just in the affordable
I think
housing?
it was about, in the affordable housing?
Yeah,
I don't
under
remember the
that,
specific, I just know that we had about 43,000 left over, but I don't know if that was from the
How it was
housing,
split.
it probably
I think
was.
part of it was from the
Yeah.
affordable housing, so we
Spend
have,
10%
in
on
addition to what we have this year,
Yeah, it
we
must
have
have
to
been,
use that,
it
yeah.
must have been.
You understand how that works? Yeah. But if we didn't spend
Last year.
the minimum
And the
that we're
10%,
required to,
the
then
10%,
it carries
yeah.
over, it stays in that category.
Right.
Anything else? I mean,
Um,
thank you. I don't, Well, you
So
don't-
the
What do you do? You got these softballs, so you just set them up?
Yeah, well, they're welcome, but yeah.
I stay up with the last one.
Yes.
So the homeowner would be at 80%, would earn less than 80% AMI or?
So this is one of the interesting things about CPA. If I were talking about home partnership or community development block grant, then yes, absolutely, because that's what the federal regulations require. This funding isn't bound by federal regulations.
Because they have to earn less than 100% AMI for CPA.
In Boston, we've seen it go to about 110, but Boston's got a very different economy than we do. And so that actually is a decision that can be made together. Although, I will say this, I mentioned about subsidy stacking. Say I were to get like an extra 50, we would then be at the 80% because I took that money. It would actually roll in all the federal regulations because we took a nickel of the federal money. If this was CPA money only, you guys can call every shot within your statutes and regulations. But once you start stacking, that's the job of the developer. We got to help you navigate. You know, what's the most restrictive from each source? That's what you're going to have to do.
I'm sorry, I'm confused, because what I've read is that the resident must earn less than 100% AMI to qualify for CPA.
If that's a requirement for CPA,
Yeah,
that's the number we use. But
It
I
is.
thought Boston had some higher figure, but it may have been a different funding
No,
source.
this is, because, remember that I sent you a link about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it talked about income limits for housing for CPA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry I didn't memorize the specific line, but yeah, no, again,
Whatever it is.
yeah, we're fully prepared to comply with what the
Okay,
rule is.
okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Thank you, Michael.
Good to see you all again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry?
What's for info?
Yeah. It's,
Well, I mean, that's the last of the agenda items. Other business, anybody have any other business? Our next meeting,
there are some
I
places
do
bigger
have
would
other
be better.
business,
And I tried to think about that.
we do?
but we could, you know, it is late, so it's up to you, but there are some things here.
Give me a sense of what they are.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Good
Mike.
night, Michael, thank you again.
Well, one of them is to do with, the contracts we're still working on with the city solicitor's office for 123 Pine Street and,
That can wait till next meeting.
and for, it's up to you, but I just want to let you know that they want to extend the deadlines. Or they would like to put in, their lawyer wants to put in something to, and so what you know, to extend the deadline in case they don't get the funding. And as you know, that already,
Drivers, I think that can wait.
okay. It's been a very complicated process, so I'd
Yeah.
love to have the committee's input. And yeah, basically, they're pressuring, that lawyer, the only reason why we might not want to wait is their lawyer is now pressuring the city solicitor office and me to get these contracts back. And I said, well, I'll try to get this information from the committee so that, you know.
If they need to make a funding cycle, and if they go there, they need to come, is that the situation?
No, it's that if they don't get that additional funding that they're reliant on in order for this project, for the CPA, you know, money to work, then that would push everything back to like 2023. So, we could put something in there that just says that they can apply for an extension if that happens, you know, prior to, you know, and that the committee would have to approve of the extension, rather than letting them change that date, you know, the dates to like from 2021 to 2023 or whatever.
Yeah, because I have a little concern just that when we had, or asked the city council for authorization, we will have told them that the funds would come back at such and such a date if they weren't extended.
Right. Yeah, we had said CPC funds will not be drawn down until all the necessary funding commitment for full construction has been obtained. And if they are not obtained, for example, this is for Pine Street, by July 31st, 2021, this grant will automatically terminate. The funds allocated for this project will no longer be reserved for this purpose. And they would like to be less severe and state that unless the grantee requests an extension approved by the CPC, but I'm thinking you might want something to state that request in writing prior to the deadline, or, you know, rather, they want to take out automatically terminate, you know, their lawyer would like to take that out, so.
Yeah, and I can understand why, and I just would be concerned that having gotten approval to do something with taxpayer money that, you know, promised that it would come back to our fund at a given date, if all their ducks were aligned. You know, I'm not sure that we really want to just say, well, okay, we're giving you another 2 years with this money without
Right.
your authorization.
Right.
They can always come back to us if
Right.
it terminates. They can just,
Or-
under emergency funding, they could say, hey, we need this in 2 months, and we'll show you we need it in 2 months, and
Yeah.
we're ready to go because we already approved it, so, I mean, I don't know, you know,
Or
I think
they
that,
could,
I don't think we can change it now.
and they could ask us to extend it, and we could put through the request to the city council, just approve this
Yeah.
for another 2 years.
Right,
In
exactly.
writing.
Yeah.
In writing, yeah.
But I don't, I think you're right to bring it to us, because I think just saying,
Yeah.
oh, fine, to the lawyer is, you know, I don't know that it's beyond our authority, but it may be, so.
So do you want to say that they could request an extension with the CPC's authorization if they don't get the funding, or just say, no, we're going to leave it as is?
Unless the funding is imminent, I mean, if they're gonna definitely get the funding and it comes, and our date comes before they get it, then, and they're gonna get it in a month after.
No, it really means they have to apply the next funding round, because it would mean that they wouldn't get it, so the entire thing would be delayed. And as you know, it's already far into the future, which was why this was a project that, you know, people were
Yeah,
initially.
I think that they could just say, you know, and you can come back, you know, if they're still
They can
negotiating the
reapply.
contract,
Yeah,
you can come back
exactly.
and ask us for an extension, and we will.
Because the
Right,
money
that's what
would
I'm
already be there.
saying. Would
Yeah.
you be okay with
Yeah,
saying that
okay.
they could, it will automatically terminate, but they could ask for an
Ask for its
extension?
termination, and at that point, we can see if we can get it.
It might be external.
It might be.
I think we wouldn't have to go through city council again, if that's what you're worried about, just so you know. I mean, it's
Well, the
already,
extension would.
Yeah, the
I
extension
don't
would.
see why you'd have to.
Because we allocated.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay,
Yeah.
good point. Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because that was the condition that we presented.
Exactly.
If
Okay.
Yeah.
they can't do the project though, why wouldn't we just take the money back and apply it to some project this round?
Yeah.
Well, if we really like the project, but that's why, another reason why we should have another chance to reconsider it.
Yeah, well, we should, it sounds like that deserves a lot, like, you know, more general conversation. It's still very vague to me, like, I don't really
Yeah.
understand.
But,
That's why,
but it does us no
Put it on
harm
the
to say,
agenda for the
you are
next
welcome
meeting.
to come
All right, so-
back and ask us for more, or ask us to extend it before the,
So can they be
We're gonna
on
make a
our
motion.
agenda for next week, or next month,
Well,
or
you
whatever?
just
we
made
see?
a point.
but, okay, the problem, as I'm understanding this, is that our original contract is still unfinished with them, and their lawyer is pushing to get this done. The contract should be executed soonish, so, you know, asking Amy to sit on this for 4 weeks may be awkward. But what we could do, it seems to me, is just say, look, we cannot say, we'll give you till 2 years later. What we can do is say, you know, you may apply to us for an extension of time, and we will consider it in our usual process, which, you know, includes, we will have to take it back to the city council for reauthorization.
Right.
And certainly, there would be no guarantee that we'll say yes. But it seems to me that we don't do our position any harm by saying in this contract, yes, you may ask for an extension. At which point, we can get the contract done and,
City council.
Yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense,
because
yeah.
the city council, if all we're saying is you can ask for an extension, we're not actually giving them anything new.
Correct.
We're not saying you will get it.
Exactly.
Correct.
Weren't
Yeah.
they supposed to have their funding already in place and everything?
That's why
Yes.
they are
Yes.
asking for the extension, which,
No, they don't, it's not quite yet that they know whether they got that funding, but they're worried that if they don't get it, that's
yeah,
what
what
they're.
happens then?
Yeah.
So they can come back.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I forgot, you're right, that was part of the condition presented to the city council, so that is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, because all of this stuff, you know, we have a bunch of things where if you can't perform in the time given, and that was important when that was the city council. We would not tie these funds up forever.
They were also asking for an extension for reports, and I thought that was more of a simpler thing, that I could just say, yes, with a request, you know,
Yeah, that's.
that's not as big a deal, right? Yeah, and so the only other thing, so that sounds sensible to everybody?
Mhm.
Right?
Do you want to take, Mr. Chairman, do you want to take a vote, or just let it be administrative?
I think this is administrative.
Okay. The other thing is just that, this is a little awkward because Mike was here, but, yeah, that, he has not signed the contract yet.
Let's put that on the next meeting, okay, people are ready to go. We
Well,
need
no,
to,
I just have to meet my husband.
we need to schedule, I need to
I'm
go
willing
too.
to, I'm
And
willing
we need
to.
to schedule our next meeting. Let's just
Okay,
add
sure.
that to the next
Okay.
next meeting agenda. And let's pick what do we have for a proposed meeting date for our next meeting?
Oh, this is the ugly problem that we put off.
So this is back to like our normal monthly
Yeah,
meeting.
because
Miami, February 2nd.
The 19th.
that, that February.
February 19th. Good.
So that worked for you, right, Vinnie, on Wednesdays? It was
Wednesdays, yeah.
busy that
Yeah,
it didn't.
Tuesdays are what doesn't work for me.
Right.
Wednesdays,
Oh,
you
you're-
and Lisa, I'm traveling.
Okay.
So Wednesdays work, okay for me.
So 6 o'clock and we'll,
What, so
or
what
did
day
you
are-
want to push it back a little bit for Wednesdays? You said-
It was Izzy that had an issue, a potential issue.
I changed my yoga name,
Okay.
Tuesday now,
Okay.
So what day are we talking about then?
it's a Wednesday,
Or what
Wednesday
date?
the 19th.
19th.
Oh, the 19th, okay, so 6 PM on the 19th.
Correct.
Sounds good.
All right, anybody gonna make a motion?
Make so moved. We adjourn?
Have a motion to adjourn?
Second it?
What's
All
our
in
here?
favor?
Aye.
Goodbye.
The new
Thank you all.